So, Frank, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm really, really happy to have you here. For those who are listening, I'd love to just introduce you first before we really, really dive in. So, for everyone that's listening, Frank Renaud is an entrepreneur. He's based out of Windsor, Ontario, who speaks passionately about mental health. He enjoys exercising regularly and finds that to be a strong foundation for his holistic health. Now, football has always been a passion of his, and he shares it with the youth through coaching and mentorship. Frank's interests also include Reiki and hot yoga. That is by far one of the coolest bios yet. Frank, thanks so much for joining us today. Really, really happy to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for chatting with me today. We've talked a lot before, so it's cool to
Totally.
do it on a recorded podcast.
For sure. And now, Frank, I've actually we went to university together, but I remember I was literally telling my sister about this yesterday because I was telling her how we had this call, and I was like, you know what, like Frank always kind of like stood out to me for some reason, like it just always kind of stood out, and I just find it so cool that finally like I have you like actually on my podcast, which is super neat years down the line. Yeah. So very excited to continue chatting with you. So I guess my first question to you is what essentially got you started and like how you started in the mental health and wellness industry?
Well, it all started when I guess my life came crashing down from cloud nine. Yeah. And it was essentially, I was in an amazing place, or so I thought, in 2018 when I was playing football. And from the outside looking in, it seemed like a dream. I was getting paid to be a professional athlete. And for the most part, things were good. And what happened was that I got injured, and it was pretty significant. It was a torn ACL, and it caused me to be out the entire year in July of 2018. So my season was done. Now, for me at the time, it didn't seem like a big deal because I had overcome something like that before. I had torn my left knee, my left ACL. I had rebounded in 5-6 months, no problem. Right. But this time it was different, and it was different because now I'm getting paid. So now I'm just wasted money. Mm-hmm. Now they're paying me to just be another man out there that's not getting paid. And to boot, I'm really not that significant to the team if you really want to get into the business side of things. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't all that bad, the recovery and the rehab and all that kind of stuff on my knee. It was going well, but it wasn't until one day when I woke up and I just kind of sat down and I had this like, wait a minute, I'm not going to play football anymore. And it was really like, it was profound. It was a strong question and a strong feeling that came through me, a feeling of insignificance, a feeling of failure, a feeling of disappointment, uncertainty. What I had, which was upon reflection, a pretty fragile foundation. The foundation that I had built of being an athlete, and I had a partner, and I thought life was all roses, it was gone because I no longer knew where I was going to get money coming in from. Granted, I had a whole season's worth of income coming in, but in my head, I'm thinking, what about next year? So I didn't know what was going on. I no longer had a foundation. I was uncertain of who I was. My identity was shot. Yeah. I just crumbled. Mm-hmm. And what that ended up leading to was me isolating myself because at the time I did that when I was low, when I was down, when I didn't really know what to do, I would just spend time alone. And in my isolation, I began to really dig deep into myself, and past trauma was coming up. I was reflecting on relationships with my mother, my stepfather, my family. I was reflecting on the history. I was reflecting on my college career, on my friendships, how little contact I had, all these things. And the truth of my situation was really hitting me in the face because there was nothing else to really look at other than the reality of my circumstances, which was minimal relationships and a life that I really didn't know. It was uncertain.
Yeah.
And one thing led to the next, like I said, and I ended up being admitted to the hospital and diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which at the time was uh, devastating. It really damaged me because the whole stigma on mental health, especially at the time, was that you were insane. And I was essentially isolated from all of my friends and family. I was in a hospital interpreting myself as insane. Friends and family, based on the stigma on mental health, they put me in a box like I was special and like I needed a certain kind of attention and to be spoken to a certain way. Everything changed. And so after going through this pain, and there's no other way to describe the pain other than a very real hurt that I had. It was deep, and you really have to have experienced it to know, not specific to me, but to the individual, that deep pain of shame and guilt. It hurts. And so as I was going through this pain, and not only that, but being alone, and then feeling like I was going to be medicated for the rest of my life, and losing friendships and just dealing with the reality of it, I thought to myself, I said, there's no way, there's no way that I'm the only person that's gone through it.
Yeah.
And then I was like, there's no way that this is it. There's no way that this is the only thing that's going to be, there's no way that this is my life. There's no way that my life is going to be held to medication and doctor's visits, that this pain is going to be forever. But this was all things they were telling me. They told me I was going to be on medication for the rest of my life, battling bipolar disorder, that I was going to go in and out of these manic episodes, that all these things. I was like, no way. It didn't make sense. It didn't make sense because there was a time in my life I was happy. And then now I've thought of things and felt things, but now you're telling me that my life is this? There's no way. And I knew that at some point I would be able to use my experience to support and inspire others. I just knew it. I knew that this was the beginning, but I didn't know that the beginning, what I felt was the beginning of this.
Right.
But as you know, in life, it's ups and downs. But because I was so attached to this idea, it was really this. But when you zoom out, it's this.
Yeah.
So when you're in it, it's the ups.
Totally. Absolutely. I really appreciate you sharing that. And one thing I noticed there, especially from the start, and then you said the word, it's a single word you said, and that was attached.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And what's interesting, and I think you definitely resonate with this, especially like with your Reiki practices and just like all of your developed mindfulness over time. But like even at the very beginning, when you mentioned like, you also said like identity, right? Your identity was just kind of like stripped from you, right? And just like, oh my God, now what the hell am I going to do? Right. And then with all of like later on down the line with these doctors saying you're going to be this, that, leaving you like very minimal, probably like no room for exploration or growth throughout the process, because that's what life is, right? You have to learn how to grow throughout the process, right? It's that there's like that attachment that was just sort of handed to you and expected of you. And I think it's phenomenal. And that's like a huge message and a really powerful one that you just kind of put out there, essentially taking that power back and realizing that you're not essentially attached to that, right? So I don't know, that the word like attached really stood out to me, like from the when you mentioned that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's a great point. So what we don't talk about is that as we grow up, we are taught that we are the thing that we do. And then we naturally develop an attachment to this thing. Yeah. And so I learned that I was a football player and that my identity was Frank, the football player. Everybody knew Frank as a football player. Yeah. And so now I had this disparity, or this hole in me, because I didn't have that anymore. I wasn't the football player. But then I had these doctors that were telling me that I have this disorder that is going to run my life. And so in a time where I have a void, they took that void and they filled it with this identity of mentally ill. and essentially in the environment I was in, categorized as insane because that's what the stigma at the time was.
Yeah.
So I had to take that. I had to take my power back. And I fought hard because there's people in my life, personally and professionally, that had me feeling like I was supposed to be a certain way because of this diagnosis, that I was supposed to be like, as though my ideas, my cool ideas now at the time would have been, oh no, he's just having a manic episode. Or my excited energy, oh no, he's high up right now, give him medication. No, this is who I am. And now I was able to take that, and now I, with my awareness and my knowledge and my strength and self-confidence, I can support other people in doing just that, because there's other ways. There's other ways to life,
Absolutely. Oh, my heart broke. My heart just broke when you said that. Like, oh, he's just having a manic episode. Like, ah.
Yeah, like put somebody in a box, why don't you? Like, just
right.
you sorted it out. It's, oh, they're having, and when in reality, I mean, as we expand on the conversation, but there's so many ways to look at things. Like, I can no longer, if somebody's going through something, or if somebody comes to me with an experience, I can't give you, first of all, I don't know anything, and that's how I approach everything. Like, let me ask as many questions as possible because I don't know. And truthfully, the individual has the answer. So when I went to somebody seeking support, I kind of knew what I wanted. I just needed guidance in figuring it out and pulling it out of me. Mm-hmm. But when they were telling me it, they were limiting me to their circle, or to their, what they knew. And then if I didn't have the self-confidence to say, slow down, let me find out for myself, I wouldn't be here in this moment. And so that's where there's strength in that. I recognize I was given this gift of rebellion, because I like, if I just followed the rules and walked the straight and narrow line that other people may walk, then I wouldn't have this gift of otherworldly perspectives to be able to add to other people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible. And I love that there are people like you out there, mm-hmm. Who are able to take such challenges and essentially turn them into something great, right? Just to help other people. So thank you for that, because we really do need more of that. So in your experience, because I'm sure like those listening, if they haven't experienced anything like this, maybe something similar, if they've known someone to experience something similar, but I'm curious as to what you find to be the biggest roadblock that the vast majority of people tend to come across, like with their own personal development journey, and especially when it comes to self-love, because I think like it sounds like throughout this entire process you also learn to love yourself a different way, right? And so what do you find to be the biggest roadblock that the vast majority of people come across with this kind of journey?
So on the topic of mental health, specifically, mental health, as I describe it in my experience, is our interpretation of things. So our ability to interpret our thoughts and our experiences is essentially our mental health, because we all look at something and there could be 100 people in a room having the same experience, but interpreting it different based on that's what I would say, their mental health. So when it comes to self-love, over the years, so now it's been, we're going on just around 4 years since being diagnosed as bipolar. What I do now is that I just learn, and it's still a learning process because I'm growing and evolving. And what I'm doing is I'm learning to love myself in every shape that I'm in all facets, in every way I can, because I am multidimensional. I'm not just one thing. I don't just live in one space. And what I've learned is that we have many aspects. So I have a nurturing part of me, then I have this competitive aspect, and then I have a side of me. So we talk about inner child, and then we talk about our higher self. And like, I have so many aspects of myself. So day to day, moment to moment, it may not be in the same state of mind as I would be in others. And so being able to love myself in my entire spectrum of being, and not being attached to being a certain way at a certain moment, has really freed myself from the jail of being being a certain way. Like there's an expectation that I have to live up to. So now when I love myself, I just love myself for who I am, how I show up. And the being knowing now more about myself and who I am, I recognize when I am not loving myself and not, being there for myself, having my own back. And then I recognize the why. I recognize that it might be because I'm tired or hungry or not full of energy. So now my whole awareness of self is that, okay, if I'm not loving myself, okay, I notice I'm not loving myself. That's a win. And then I notice why I'm not loving myself. That's another win. And then I also get to recognize when it may not even be my lack of love. Maybe it's a projection that I received from somebody else that I have to say, okay, take that one back because that's not for me. All this awareness.
That's interesting. That last point there is just like knowing how to or identify like when, because that's essentially like a boundary, right? Setting up that boundary, knowing what energy is and isn't yours, right? That's huge. So ultimately, like just essentially building that self-awareness, right? Learning and discovering more about yourself, right? Is that like a fair summary of that? Just like knowing who you are, what you're after, and like what you truly, essentially who you truly are and what works and what doesn't, kind of thing.
Yeah, like in a nutshell, to take my whole life from 12 years old to 20, I'm 29, so 17 years. I was in cadets because somebody else told me, and it was great. Like, I'm not mad. I was in cadets for 7 years and I developed a lot. Somebody told me, and then somebody said, do football. So I did football, and that took me for another 7 years or so. Wow. Now I'm at a place where nobody's telling me anything. Okay. Okay. Nobody's telling me, okay, what do I want to do? But now it's also unlearning the dependency on somebody else and what they want from me, learning what I want. Okay, so now I'm 25. What do I want? Who do I like? What do I like? What do I like to eat? What do I like to watch? What do I like? All these things about myself. So it's the awareness of self, and then creating that foundation, and then not letting anybody else tell me different. So there's like this massive learning about self that I didn't even know.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. I love how you worded that, because I see this all the time, because I mean, we are ultimately born as blank slates, right? And then like as we grow up, all of these pressures or different ideals and interpretations of the world are placed onto us. It's like, okay, this is how you're going to be, right? And fair enough, like there's nothing wrong with that. That's why we're still living, right? Because if we didn't have that, we probably wouldn't make it very far, right? We've been conditioned to be a certain way so that we could make it to this point. But then like I think so I know I've heard Mel Robbins say it, pretty sure Jordan Peterson says it too. I'm sure like lots of individuals in the self-development industry say it, but you have to learn how to be your own adult as well, right? Or parent, sorry. Because like as you like growing up, we always had our parent there, right? Or some other guardian or some kind of influence telling us how we had to be, right? And then when we're off on our own, it's just like, like who am I, right? And it's so overwhelming with pressure, right? There's just so much pressure on being a certain way, right? And like I'm sure, especially I hear about it, I experience it myself, right? Especially throughout our 20s. It's just like, oh, like you see these friends are working crazy cool careers. These friends already have families, right? Or like, and you're just like, what am I supposed to do here, right? And I think your explanation and like even just your journey itself, the way you explained it, of just like, you essentially detached from all of those interpretation or I guess ideals that other people put on you. You detach from them and you refound yourself, and you rebuilt your own foundation, and then furthermore implemented your own boundaries and throughout developed true self-acceptance and self-love throughout the entire process, which is just such a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And what came up when you were sharing that, so like and this is really cool because I feel like there's kind of three parts to this. So they often say, who were you before they told you how to act and how to behave, right? So there's that idea like, okay, let me take that in. Now let me talk about this part. So when I was 12, people who were in the military and around cadets and seeing cadets work told me to do cadets. And then I went into cadets and I became what I became. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now cadets is no longer feeling fulfilling to me. And somebody else in my life said, do football because it will take you far. And I did football and I went far. Okay, now I'm 25. And now the challenge there was that there was shame and guilt in this failure, as though I was supposed to be or do something, right? But when we think about who were you before they told you who to be or what to do. So I was supported by the universe in a reflection of the people I see. I was supported by saying do cadets. And then I became very successful. And then I was told do football. And then I became very successful. So when I extract the qualities and the skills out of everything that I've done in the last 15 years and take away the identities that I developed in that, I am a successful, hardworking, diligent, and then I go through this list of qualities that I've had since I was 12. Yeah. So then when I extract all of that and I discover that I am, or I have these skills of hard work and awareness and competency at a high level, etc., I discover that what I'm really seeking now in life is to be happy. But now I get to really have a choice in what I want to do to be happy. So once I bridge the gap of what I love to do, which turns out I love to do music, I love to inspire, I love to be creative, I love to live life on my own terms, this makes me happy. And then I apply the skills that I've developed over the time. Now I have this magical life that I'm building that is my own, where there's this happiness that I've cultivated myself that no longer has an identity that I have to live up to. Yeah. So now I'm starting to hit the sweet spot, right? So now life is starting to blossom, but it took time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It Absolutely. Took a lot of time, and that's something I think that, we got to talk about as a collective. It takes time.
Yeah. Patience.
Yeah.
Patience is huge, right? And one thing when you were saying that, it made me think of something, actually an old post I shared from like 2 years ago. I said, don't chase happiness, strive for meaning, or strive for meaning, right? Because and I hear it all the time, we see it all the time. It's like, oh, I just want to be happy, right? Or I want to live a happy life. I'm aiming for happiness. What does that mean? You know what I mean? Like, it's not like happiness is temporary, right? But like when we strive for meaning, it's because we know that thing, that whether like doing that, committing that action, right, or putting ourselves in that situation, right, we know it connects with our most authentic self, right, and those core values, right? And that's where that meaning comes from, right? And everyone's like, well, what's my purpose? It's like, well, you're not going to find your purpose until you truly identify who you are, right? And what you like deep down in what you are, and once you do that, you can then identify what you are and are not okay with doing or accepting, like be it treatment to yourself, but also from other people as well, right? So I love that. So throughout your entire journey, what, like, just for those who are listening, who, especially for those who feel kind of like lost, and maybe they're uncertain as to how to even start, right, finding who they want to be, or rather who they are, what are some like pieces of advice you could actually give to our listeners who are undergoing, like, maybe they do feel like a little stuck and lost? What would you tell them?
Embrace it.
Yeah.
And now here I am on my pedestal of having been in a really dark place, and I just want to reflect that, like, I was in a really dark place, and I was in a place that I didn't see any other way out than self-harm. And so, like, to be clear, I've been there, and I'm not saying I know what anybody's going through. What I will say is this: I was so resistant to where I was at that it consumed me, because my resistance prohibited me from seeing the gift in where I was at. So I've been so go my entire life that my where I was at was it was Frank Rest. You've worked really hard for 15 years, literally day and night, nonstop, just for 5 months, rest and gain
Wow.
perspective and look at your gifts. But I was so resistant that it took me 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what I would say is this: embrace where you're at as part of your journey. We always say everything happens for a reason. So why wouldn't this low part, this dark part, be the perfect part of it for you to see something that you otherwise wouldn't see if you weren't in
Yeah.
this position? And then really give yourself space and forgiveness and patience and the opportunity to just be
Mhm.
in a world that wants us far often to do something or accomplish a task. And I'll even reflect yesterday, for example, I needed to rest, but I wanted to go. So my resistance to rest caused the day to drag out for without rest. So when I stop resisting what I need in the moment and I can tune in and listen to what I want and what I need deep down, then it really leaves space for the magic, if you will, to happen. And
Yeah.
so I invite us all, and I invite whoever's listening to rather than deny yourself the magic of this present moment and whatever it may be, let it be rest or action. Uh, Listen to what's going on in the moment and see if you can receive that message, if you will.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And even um now, actually, one thing I did really want to ask you a little bit about, or like have you talk a bit about, is your Reiki.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for those who are listening who are like, what the heck is that? Could you just give a little bit of background as to, because I mean, that's like a part of your who, like what you do now. Like, what could you just explain a little bit more about what Reiki is? And
Yeah. So what's really cool about this is that Reiki it's a form of energy healing,
Mhm.
and the history dates back thousands of years to a teacher actually who he was in a town in Japan and everybody was getting sick, and essentially what he did was he went up into the mountains and spent time meditating and received this download of information about chakras and energy portals that we have. And through this information and through this modality, he went and healed the town and started teaching people. And so the long short of it is that in our physical body, we have 7 energy portals, which go from the top down is the crown, which is above the head, the third eye, the throat chakra, the heart, the sacral, or excuse me, the solar plexus, which is in your stomach, the sacral, and the root. And they all are in relationship to a certain physical part of our bodies. And it represents certain things that are going on in the body. And so what I can do is I can take a look at what chakras are open or closed and then use that information through discussion with the client, talk about what's going on in their life, and through what's open and closed, see how it mirrors. And then in that information, now somebody has actionable items that they can do to open up and keep that energy flowing. And when the energy is flowing, more often than not, there's a feeling of ease and lightness, like a floating. So when I work with clients, we'll take a look at what's open and what's closed, talk about it, clear out and open everything. And usually after a session, clients are usually feeling lighter, calm, peaceful, relaxed, and then they can go about their day with an awareness of what they get to work on. And more often than not, with that awareness, they begin to see what's going on in their life
right.
as a reflection of the chakras being open and closed. And yeah, it's just another way to self-care.
Wow, that's really cool. I like that a
Mhm.
lot. Side note, have you ever read the Celestine Prophecies?
Yeah, I'm reading it right
Are
now.
you really?
Yeah,
Oh shit.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
amazing. As you're
yeah.
saying this, I'm like, oh, he has to read Celestine Prophecies.
Yep. I read that one. I read the 10th Insight,
Yeah.
and I guess there's more that I like, the 13th and stuff, but
Yeah, I haven't read
I I love the story, and I love the reality of it. Really reflects kind of what's going on in the world today, talking about looking back in history and the energies and stuff. So It's really cool. Yes, I am reading
Are
it.
you going to go to Peru next or what?
You know, I'm not even gonna lie, that gets to be on my list of to-dos
Oh,
because
oh,
have you been?
yes, and I'm not even kidding.
Mhm.
The energy there is different.
Mhm.
Like I've traveled like multiple. I've done quite a bit of backpacking, and it's not often that I actually want to go back to a place, but there was something about Peru that like it stuck with me. I'm just like, I have to go back. There's
Okay.
there's a certain kind of energy there.
Mm.
I'm not even like just saying this like to blow smoke. Like it's pretty phenomenal. So if you can go to Peru, you should, especially after reading.
Hmm. Oh yeah, and I'm pretty sure like the places they're talking about, like that church where they're doing the research, pretty sure that's real. I don't think that's like just
Oh,
part of the story, but yeah, I love the book. It's
okay,
really
cool.
cool.
That's so funny. I was like, yeah, this sounds,
It's in my living room
yeah,
actually.
oh, that's amazing. I love it. I love it. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I really wanted to give the listeners some better insight into Reiki. That's super cool. I love that. And one thing I really, really admire is how you, because okay, so my approach to personal development, and I'm sure like most people are, is focusing on the mind, body, and spirit, right?
Mhm.
And I love how, like, one thing you just taught me with Reiki is like that like actionable aspect of it, right? So
Yeah.
I find that a lot of people when they hear like Reiki is like, oh, it's just like energy. It's like, well, not quite. There is energy, but you're also like connecting the dots, right? And you said like opening and closing the gate, right? And like, or did you say gate or door? I can't remember.
Like the energy portals.
Portals, right?
Yeah.
Exactly, right? And then like once you identify that and then putting it into actionable uh like, well, into actions,
Yeah.
which is phenomenal. I really like.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, healing is awareness of self and like shedding. So if I can have more information, then there's more that I can do in my life and take action on. And now I feel I'm more powerful and I can essentially pilot the ship of my life.
Yeah.
And so this is all information and like I said, it creates this awareness with self. And through that awareness, I can really start to take care of myself better. So Reiki was a gift to me from somebody in my life, and through that, they told me things 4 years ago that I'm now doing and living today, and practicing today. So I can only imagine what will happen in the next decade, and then the gift that I can give to others is that awareness and it's just magic. It's one of the many pieces of healing.
Amazing,
Mhm.
amazing. Oh, I appreciate that. I appreciate you so much. This is
Likewise.
this is incredible. Okay, so Frank, for our listeners who are listening and want to find you after this, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I have all of my handles on social media are Frankie Renaud, FrankeyRenaud. And then I have a website coming out soon, which is frankierenaud.com, where I'll be sharing my own personal podcast called Frankie's Corner. And then I'll also be open to some conversations there as well. There'll be blogging and YouTube videos and stuff also.
That's awesome. I didn't know. That's so cool. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Yikes. Amazing. Well, Frankie, thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
You just have such a wonderful energy to you. So thank you very much for joining us today and talking with us on my podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate you. This was fun.
All right, see you.